and its impact on women and what women are doing about it. There are so many conflicts, as you know, and there are so many crises are happening, including, not crises, including important issues such as the US presidential election that is taking all of our attention. But there is really something bigger than all of that, bigger than the wars that are happening at the moment, bigger than all the political turmoil, which is climate change. And the not only the health of our earth, but truly the survivor and the health of our children and grandchildren. Some of my colleagues and I just came from Greenland in a scientific expedition to try to understand what's happening to the glaciers. And we came out really with not only it was in our face that this is happening, that this is actually the most existential crisis facing humanity, that what we are facing right now from climate change is not because of our action today, it is because of our action from 50 years ago. And that if we do not reform today and adapt and adjust and change our industry, our politics, our financing, our infrastructures, actually our children's and grandchildren's survival and well-being is truly, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, is truly at stake. And so it puts even more energy and more fuel, at least to my heart and to many people who witness what I just witnessed heart, that this is important. And we are not having enough airtime for climate change, enough understanding of it, and we need to continue the dialogue and education and raising awareness about the issue and about how it's impacting different sectors of the population, and mostly, really, ultimately, is what we each can do about it. Now, I'm an optimist by nature. I have worked in war zones. I've survived wars, and so I've chosen to be optimistic by nature and to see the positive side of humanity and this world rather than the negative side. And at Daughters for Earth, we decided to go on and have our North Star, the African fable about the hummingbirds. It's called the hummingbird effect, was told originally by the late Wangari Maathai, the Nobel laureate. And the hummingbird, if you're not familiar, allow me to tell you quickly about it, because it is a story about a forest where all the animals lived happily together, and then fire erupted, and most of the animals panicked. What's going to happen to their homes? What's going to happen to their food, their well-being? Except for a tiny hummingbird. And the hummingbird rushed to the local river, took a drop of water, and rushed to the fire and dropped the drop on top of the fire. And it kept on going back and forth, very fiercely. And initially, the animals laughed at her and saying, "What are you doing? You're just a tiny hummingbird with your tiny drop of water. You cannot make a difference." But she, we call her she, looked at everyone and said, "I am doing everything I can to turn off the fire, even with my small drop of water. So instead of criticizing me, why don't you join me?" And with that, all the animals got inspired and did their own bits of carrying whatever water they could. And it turned out to be, and they were able to turn off the fire. And that was called the hummingbird effect. Now, we chose, so the magnitude of the crisis may be big, but we each have a drop of water in our hands. What can we do about it? How can we do about it? What can we do now is something we have a choice in and something we can. And for me personally, and for all of us at Daughters for Earth, we chose our drop to be women, to be our daughters. And you may say, actually, women are not a drop. Women are half of the population in the entire world. Indeed, we are not, but that's our action, is indeed that they are half of the population of and the entire world. And indeed, they are being impacted severely by climate change, mostly because they also happen to be the most vulnerable population in the entire world. Just as a sector, women tend to be most vulnerable. So they're facing the impact of climate change in ways that is actually really not talked about enough, from heat, from violence, from displacement, from food insecurity, from water insecurity. It goes on and on and on and on the list. But as always, working with women, the story is not always depressing and gray. actually, they are also doing a lot of things, not some things about it, addressing the immediate issues, addressing immediate climate change, climate adaptations, climate impact, addressing the loss of biodiversity, addressing the protection of animals and the wildlife, addressing impact leading to change immediately on the grounds and in their communities. And in my observation, in founding and going and visiting so many women in the last 2.5 years since the founding of Daughters for Earth. And we have so far supported 200 women-led efforts in 50 countries. In my observation, women are not only very efficient in what they are doing in terms of immediate impact on nature, but also they are leading to lasting change in behavior and in their communities to actually adapt to a new reality with nature. Something, frankly, we all need to prioritize and we all need to follow. And so today's discussion is really about raising awareness and an invitation for all of us to learn more from experts in here, both on an intellectual level, on statistics and facts and figures, as well as on the grounds of leading change. What are they doing? What is the issue? And an invitation for all of us to be inspired and do our bits of what we can do, what we each can do, our own drop of the hummingbird effect. Before I hand it over to our guest speakers and introduce them, I want to just say one thing about Daughters for Earth, which is we are on the mission to find and support women who are on the front lines of leading climate change actions and change and addressing biodiversity loss, celebrating all of them, their stories. They are the current heroes. We shouldn't wait for them to be elders or dying before we celebrate their legacies. The legacies is today. So celebrate them and mobilize all and invite all to join them, not only in knowing what the women are doing, not only in supporting them, not only in celebrating them, but actually joining them in doing whatever action you can do in your own life, in your business, in your corporation, in your company, in your government, local government, in your community. It doesn't matter where, but we need the action and we need it now. So with that, I believe every change takes different elements of our mind. It takes hearts and it takes minds. It takes facts and figures and it takes stories. Today, I hope we do all of it. And allow me to start with a dear, I don't know what you call Maisha, someone I respect dearly, Maisha Alam, who is the Vice President of Research at Foreign Policy Magazine, where she oversees the team of FP Analytics, the Research and Advisory Division, and leads research development. She's an expert on climate change, on women's issues, and on conflict. And we have got the privilege of working with her and collaborating with her and her team at FP to produce several papers to try to find out the facts and figures behind how climate change is impacting women, and more importantly, what they are doing about it. So with that, I hand it over to Maisha Alam for her presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, everybody. It's such a pleasure and privilege to join you all. And thank you so much, Zainab, not only for the kind words, but for the partnership that we've had and the entire Daughters for Earth team. I'm really delighted to have the opportunity to share some of our research findings during this webinar and hopefully raise awareness and help all of you understand not only why Daughters for Earth is advancing the kind of change, but the difference that it has the potential to make. And so just very quickly, I thought I would provide some key takeaways, if you will, from the research partnership that we have. And this is on women's leadership driving climate action. It's something that we began last year, and with the goal of building an evidence base to not only grow impact, but also investment. And so the goals of the partnership that we have are essentially around evidence-based solutions to inform investment and policies. And that is through establishing an evidence base, scaling up solutions, and increasing investment. Why is this important? Well, let me start with just two important data points. The first is that women receive just 0.2% of all international climate finance, that is official development assistance or overseas aid. Zainab was talking about a drop in the bucket. You know, this is barely a drop in the ocean, so to speak. And at the same time, to zoom out a little bit, 80% of all climate finance goes to male-led organizations and 90% to organizations that are led by white people. And that's really important when you think about not only the disproportionate impacts of climate change across the globe, and especially in low and middle income countries, but also what Zainab was alluding to in her earlier comments about the vulnerabilities that women and girls face. In short, climate change is a force multiplier when it comes to exacerbating gender inequalities and inequalities along virtually every metric that you can imagine, whether that's health, education, economics, political standing, participation in society, and so on and so forth. And so that's really what's driven this partnership. And so I'll focus on the projects that we've been able to complete so far and the research findings that we're able to share. Last year at COP29 in Dubai, we launched our first research project that we've undertaken together. And this was on accelerating nature-based solutions through women's leadership. For everyone's awareness, nature-based solutions are those efforts to advance climate action that draw on and are based or rooted in nature. Now, over half of all global GDP, about $44 trillion, depends on nature and ecosystem services. And nature-based solutions could provide almost 1/3 of climate mitigation that's required to stabilize the rate at which our planet is warming by 2030. Yet it remains under-leveraged and under-financed. Just as an example, in 2022, just $154 billion out of $484 billion necessary for funding towards nature-based solutions was actually pledged. Now, where do women fit into the picture? Well, women represent fewer than 1/5 of global landowners and are legally or culturally prevented from owning and inheriting land in half of the world's countries. That's really important when you think about how many nature-based solutions are rooted in land, whether that's regenerative agriculture or many other forms of solutions. At the same time, and as Zainab was correctly alluding to, it's also about women's potential and unlocking that potential. And so our research shows that given the same access to resources and land as men, women smallholder farmers who produce much of the world's food could increase their agricultural productivity by 20 to 30% while reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 2.1 gigatons by 2050. So it's as much about the planet as it is about people and people's well-being. More recently, earlier this year in April, and alongside a global summit on water security, we launched our second research project on transforming water security through women's leadership. Again, just to provide a little bit of context. 2 billion people experience water scarcity globally, and as you can imagine, the impacts are disproportionate on women and girls, especially as relates to water, sanitation, and hygiene. Not only that, but more than 2/3 of all jobs in low-income countries, and did you know half of all jobs in high-income countries are water dependent? And yet, women comprise only 17% of paid water sector jobs globally. And as you can imagine, when it comes to the leadership structure, they're especially underrepresented in those decision-making and leadership roles. But again, it's really important to understand the roles that women already play as relates to water stewardship and how to drive that. So women and girls are responsible for 80% of water collection households globally that lack piped water. Let's take India for an example, the world's most populous country and the 5th largest GDP in the world. Productivity losses relating to education, employment, economic output from women's water collection is equivalent to almost 5% of India's GDP. That's what the economic consequences are at a macro level, let alone at a micro or individual level. At the same time, women have really important roles to play in transboundary water governance, which is important not only for mitigating water-related conflicts for those water bodies that cross national borders, but also effectively managing water, especially in drought or flood-prone regions. So one of the things that we emphasize in our research and demonstrate with evidence is that it's really important to foster women's decision-making at every level of water governance, local, national, regional, and global. Finally, our latest research project, which is launching actually later this month alongside the UN General Assembly in New York and during Climate Week, is on biodiversity and protecting biodiversity and driving sustainable development through women's leadership. So again, a little bit of context. About a quarter of the world's animal and plant groups are currently threatened by extinction. And it's not just about the planet. Again, it's so important to understand the consequences on nature, but it's also really important to understand the consequences on economic growth and on livelihoods. Biodiversity loss could result in $2.7 trillion reduction in global GDP by 2030. And at the same time, if you accelerate investment and do so in a targeted way that uplifts community, every dollar spent in biodiversity conservation is demonstrated to have a return on investment of almost $7 over the course of the subsequent 5 years. That's a huge ROI, and it really underscores why it's important to prioritize biodiversity conservation. And women and girls are key to that work. Indigenous women, for example, use traditional knowledge to support climate resilience and biodiversity conservation. And I know we have some folks who are going to be presenting on that later today. Similarly, cross-border women-led conservation efforts are really important for not only promoting biodiversity, but peace building in border regions. And so that's another kind of added benefit. But it's not just about the grassroots levels. Our research demonstrates that companies with over 30% women as board members have better climate governance structures and results. And so what we emphasize is the need to create gender-sensitive policies, expand funding, and strengthen capacity building. Now, those are just the findings of the work that we've been able to do together since our partnership began last year. But as you can imagine, we are barely scratching the surface. And so I wanted to conclude by mentioning just a couple of topics where, given resources and opportunity, we'd love to be able to expand this evidence base and bring it to the attention of policymakers and funders. That includes, for example, women and resilience to extreme heat, which is so important when you think about how much our planet is warming every year. Women-led climate action in fragile and conflict-affected areas. I know this is an issue that's near and dear to Zainab's heart because of all of the work she's done over the course of her incredible career, and also because I've worked on these issues for the better part of the last 20 years on women, peace, and security, and we really need to be bringing that issue area and women in climate action together. And then finally, another example is women and women's roles in the just energy transition. This is a phrase that's thrown around a lot, but what are we talking about? The world's most energy poor are women and girls. And at the same time, women and girls have an incredibly important role to play when it comes to the stewardship of renewable energies like solar, wind, and others, and the transition away from fossil fuels. And yet there's such little evidence and analysis into both the impacts and opportunities that remain untapped. So with all of that, I'm going to pause and hand it back to Zainab, but I hope this gives you a flavor for why this kind of knowledge base is important and how we're trying to strategically amplify it in order to ultimately drive the kind of action that we all want to see going forward.
It's amazing. Thank you so much, Maisha. I really, really appreciate it. As you can see, that we're trying to read, because a lot of people, when we say we need to focus on women, we need to get more resource for women, they say we need data, we need resource. So our partnerships with FP really is helping us provide that data, not only, of course, for us, for everyone in the world. And we're hoping to even magnify that data more and more and more to create some impactful change that we really need and need immediately for all, for the larger issue and for women in particular. Now we're going to shift from these studies to someone in America, a young woman who always fills my heart when I meet her, and actually wonderful woman who is on a mission to create a movement to end the usage of pesticides around all over, hopefully America and beyond. but she started with her own college campus, actually with her own school campus in Hawaii. And now she is creating a nationwide movement to end the usage of pesticides through her organization, Wild Your Campus. Mackenzie Feldman, she's joining us from Texas today, and I have extreme pleasure to welcome her here. Mackenzie, it's all yours. And may I say something? If you have any questions, please do send it in the chat. Anna is collecting all the questions, and we will open the discussion for questions and answers afterwards. But if you can just document your questions and send it to Anna. Thank you. Mackenzie.
Thank you, Zainab. Thank you, Daughters for Earth team. And thank you, Maisha, for those stats. I didn't plan for this, but I feel like maybe we could all just close our eyes and take one collective breath. Those stats were really intense and so important. And so now that we're going to talk about solutions, maybe everyone just close their eyes, take a breath in, and take a breath out. Thank you. I think those stats are incredibly significant and excited to now get to talk about the solutions. So thank you for having me. My name is Mackenzie Feldman, and I'm the founder and director of Rewild Your Campus. And I'm going to share a little bit about my story and how we got started and what we're doing. I'm really grateful to be in partnership with this Daughters for Earth team. So my story starts on the beach volleyball court at UC Berkeley. I was recruited to UC Berkeley to play beach volleyball. And one day when I showed up for practice, when I was a junior, our coach said, "Don't chase the ball if it rolls off the court." And herbicide had been sprayed everywhere around the court. And me and my teammate Bridget were concerned hearing this. I grew up in Hawaii. For those of you who don't know, Hawaii is ground zero for industrial agriculture use. They do a lot of the GMO corn seed testing in Hawaii to test the seed's resistance to pesticides. And so when I was in high school, there was a big movement to ban GMOs and get these pesticides off of the islands because they were making communities really sick. My community, there's cancer clusters and babies being born with intestines on the outside of their body because of how many pesticides were being sprayed. So this is an issue that I was already passionate about. And so when me and my teammate heard that they were spraying this around our court, obviously we were concerned. We asked to talk to the groundskeeper. And so we set up a meeting with him, and he said, he's spraying Ranger Pro as a glyphosate-based herbicide. And this was in 2017. So 2 years prior, glyphosate had been declared a probable carcinogen by the World Health Organization. And so we said, can we just pick the weeds instead of having you spray? And he said, sure, I don't have the staff to pick the weeds, but if the girls on your team want to pick the weeds, go for it. And so that's what we did, sort of like the hummingbird and the story that Zainab mentioned, right? It was just, we saw a problem, we did what we could, sure, we'll pick the weeds. And I think Bridget and I were both really surprised at how easy we were able to get this done. All of a sudden, forever, they're never going to spray pesticides there again. He agreed. And it just was an important lesson for me, when you come at a problem with a solution, with an offer to help, instead of just pointing out the problem, we can actually get a lot done. And so what we did was we decided to expand this movement to the rest of UC Berkeley's campus. We got all of UC Berkeley to go organic. And then I graduated in 2018. And so I was wondering what I was going to do after college, was applying to jobs. And I happened to be in San Francisco during the Roundup trial, this court case of Lee Johnson versus Monsanto. I would say, raise your hand if you'd heard of this, but I can't see any of you. But maybe some of you had heard of this trial. It was a man named Lee Johnson, a groundskeeper who got diagnosed with terminal cancer from using the same product that we were exposed to, Ranger Pro. And so I was really interested to go to the trial because here was this everyday, working class guy just trying to do his job and feed his family, and got sick. And now he's taking on, one of the largest chemical companies in the world. He sued Monsanto, the maker of the chemical, which is now Bayer. And so I sat in on the trial and was just so inspired by his story, and ended up writing him a letter saying, this is what we did at Berkeley. You're really inspiring to me. And I passed it to his lawyer to give to him. And he ended up winning the trial. And I realized sitting there that I needed to expand this work beyond Berkeley, that the work wasn't done at Berkeley. How many more people were there like him groundskeepers across the country who were unknowingly being exposed to a chemical, just trying to do their job. And so I decided in that moment when I was sitting there to expand this work beyond UC Berkeley. And so Lee Johnson, he wrote me back. I had left his email and he said, I want to help you with your campaign. And so we brought him to Hawaii and we had him speak to the Board of Education, and they were so moved by his story that the next day they decided to ban herbicides from every public school in the state. And I think it's a huge lesson because it's so important to center the voices of the people most exposed, because he can actually speak to the other groundskeepers and say, hey, I understand you're using these pesticides. I was in the same position and it gave me cancer and I don't want you to get cancer. So we should really stop using these. You know, it's so powerful. And so this was an awesome moment, and we really just didn't stop from there. And so we created this organization called Rewild Your Campus. First, it was Herbicide Free Campus, and now we're Rewild Your Campus. And it's a student-founded, women-led organization, and our goal is to rid every school of synthetic pesticides and fertilizers by 2030. And not just ridding schools of pesticides, but really making schools climate resilient, increasing biodiversity, you know, increasing pollinator habitats on campuses. And so, you know, at least in the US, this is what a lot of campuses look like. It's mostly lawn, which is the #1 most irrigated crop in America that requires a lot of water and uses a lot of pesticides. And so what's the solution? We're talking about, you know, when we talk about rewilding, it's talking about eliminating pesticides, transitioning conventional lawns to organic lawns, but also thinking about how can we have less lawns and more native plants to protect students, to build climate resilience. When we have healthy soil, it can sequester carbon, it can save water, and foster biodiversity. And so we have stats. We already know organic land care saves about 25 to 30% of water. This can result in millions of acres on a college campus every year. It also saves money. You're not having to, you know, purchase inputs anymore, and it improves the soil health. And when we're talking about rewilding, it's even better. That's the goal, is less lawns, increase more native plants, which can fight climate change and increase biodiversity. And this can have huge ripple effects. You know, there's over 4,000 colleges in the US that spend a bunch of money and can have, you know, in society, people really look at college campuses as the model. And so if we can demonstrate, you know, that colleges are becoming climate resilient, it can have huge impacts around the country. This is just a graph to kind of show, you know, no matter what you're interested in, this issue of pesticides, it relates to pollinators, public health, biodiversity. And I'm just going to skip through this because I want to get through the end, but this is just some of what we've been able to do. We got glyphosate banned from every University of California school. And I'll talk now about kind of the pilot projects that we have going on. So now we're working with colleges across the US. I work with so many students, with groundskeepers, with sustainability directors. Here's just some that we're working with. And we have a student network, a green ground certification. We have a boot camp where we educate students and community members. And we have organic pilot projects where we train groundskeepers on how to go organic. And for the sake of this, I'm going to have to kind of skip through. Here's some of the pilot projects that we're working on right now. What was really cool about Drexel is we did a pilot project. The groundskeepers were so excited about how it went that on Earth Day, they announced that the entire school was going to go organic, which was really exciting. We got an article about that here. And then the rewilding piece. So we are working with schools like at Grinnell, the students actually removed the grass and planted a native prairie. And this is what it looks like now right here. It's so beautiful, so much better for pollinators. And College in New Jersey, this was featured in NPR this year, students. And I think it's important to note, this isn't just for the environmental benefits, but working with college students who have severe climate anxiety, you know, don't feel like they have power and a voice. When you actually get them doing something on the ground, using their hands, it's really empowering, and then they're going to go on to graduate and, you know, become change makers in their community. And so it's really important to work with young people and show them that, yes, your voice does matter and you can make a difference in your community. Here's a little bit about the certification. We've certified 8 schools so far. You can email me if you want to learn more about it. I want to make sure that everyone else has time to speak. We have our boot camp. And here's our goals: to empower the next generation of climate leaders and make campuses pesticide free, increase biodiversity, and really have college campuses, it become the status quo where you're not spraying pesticides, similar to the tobacco free movement, where you go on a space, you just assume it's tobacco free. And that's what we want to do with this issue of pesticides. Thank you so much. And you can,
Wow.
here's my email if you want to get in touch.
Bravo, 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 Mackenzie. Thank you so much. And we're happy to connect any of you who want to connect with Mackenzie as well, in case you haven't captured her email. But I mean, the health of the soil, this is something I had to learn, is actually vitally important. Some of the solutions that we are learning from climate scientists, they are talking not only about renewable energy, which is getting so much airtime, and technology, which gets so much airtime and so much money. The health of the soil and the health of the and its impact on our agriculture system and our health and our food productivity, and actually on carbon sequencing, is essential part of climate solutions, and one that we need more attention to. And this is, so it's beyond the pesticides, which she is on a mission and a movement. I don't know about you, but I believe in Mackenzie's ability to have a college-free pesticides campus all over America, and I'm pretty sure you're going to take it globally at one point as well. So congratulations, and thank you so much. And I definitely learn so much every time I hear you speak. Thank you so much, Mackenzie. And now we go from America to from college campuses, rather than to the grounds in the Masara in Kenya. We are joined with Shabani Bala and Mentili Lala Barisuri. I hope I said it correctly. Shabani and Mentili are joining us from Kenya. Shabani is a conservation biologist. And is the founder of Iwasu Lions, who combines scientific research with community mobilization to protect the lions and to look at the interconnection between biodiversity, and especially within the lens of the lions, and the coexistence of communities. I recently had the privilege to visit her work and meet Menteli myself in an expedition that Daughters for Earth organized with Soul Safari, and it was beautiful, revolutionary, inspiring work, and a testament of the immediate and long-lasting transformation that these women-led efforts are actually doing, and not only addressing biodiversity loss and conservation and climate issues, but also bringing everyone along the journey. And Shabani and Mentali are a testament for that. So over to you both. Thank you so much. And please remember to send your questions. We are eager for the discussions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zainab, Maisha, Mackenzie, and the whole Daughters for Earth team. What an amazing couple of half an hour we've had. I've learned so much. I've been busy translating to Menteli. We're absolutely delighted to be here. Again, thank you for this opportunity. I'm particularly thrilled that my colleague Menteli is here with me. She's our Mama Simba manager. And so much of what I'm going to talk about is about her and her story. So she's here today to be part of this as well. Iwasu Lions is a lion conservation project located up in the Samburu region of northern Kenya, which is exactly where we are now. It's night at the moment, but if this was an hour ago, this river you see in this picture is right here in front of us. It's a spectacular landscape where people and wildlife and livestock are all coexisting. Why do we do lion conservation? Some of you might not know this, but lions are in serious decline across the African continent. There's only about 20,000 lions left in Africa. In Kenya, my country, there's only about 2,500 lions. And here, up in northern Kenya, only about 50 lions. It might sound like a really small number, but this is such a significant population for our country, not just for the ecology of the area, but also for our communities. These are the amazing communities that I'm so honored and privileged to live and work with. For the last 22 years, I've been here in Samburu. I moved here from my home in Nairobi, and I never left. And the Samburu communities, their lives depend on their livestock. Camels, goats, donkeys, and sheep mean everything to them. It is their bank, it is who they are. And of course, their livestock depend on the land. And unfortunately, this is really what the land looks like. It's a land that's severely degraded. Climate change is so real here. We see it, we feel the impact of climate change every single day. We've just come out early this year, we came out of a 3-year drought. This was devastating for not only our wildlife population, but for our communities and their livestock. They lost so much. When this happens, lions get into a lot of trouble. When they're looking for their normal prey and they don't find enough food, they go after cows and camels, which tend to be easier for them. And unfortunately, when a lion kills a cow or a camel, understandably, our communities feel very upset and angry, and often they will go out and shoot lions in retaliation. So what Iwasa Lions did was try to, at the beginning in 2007, how can we address this issue, these threats that lions are facing? We did that through a number of community-led programs. Our warrior program, where young Samburu warriors are, instead of killing lions, are going out and protecting them. We have a children's program called Lion Kids Camp, where we're really building not the next generation of conservationists, but a new generation of conservationists. Kura's Pride, named after my dog, we're improving the welfare of domestic dogs to stop the spread of disease to wild carnivores. And all this is backed up by research. But what I'm really going to talk about today is our Mama Simba program, which means Mother of Lions. And Mama Simba was started by this amazing lady and her colleague Parasaroy. They came to me back in 2013 and said, Shivani, you've been working with warriors for so many years. Why aren't you involving us? Because traditionally, wildlife belonged to us anyway. It is part of who we are. It is part of our culture. But wildlife was taken away from us. So we want to bring it back. We want to do what we know we can do to protect the wildlife in this region. And that is how Mama Simba started. The women themselves came up with the vision, the strategy, the activities of what Mama Simba would do. A big part of what they do is managing the water resources. As I said, we've just come out of such a bad drought early this year, and the amazing Iwasa River that is really the heart of this region dries up every single year now. When I moved here in 2002, it was a fast-flowing river every single day. But now, since 2009, this river that everyone depends on dries up. Our Mama Simbas, we have a group of 21 of them. They go out, they're digging water holes for livestock during the day and for wildlife at night. Just in the last year, when the river was dry, they dug numerous water holes, and we could really see the impact of what that was having. Invasive species has now become a big new threat for us, and invasive species do very well, unfortunately, in degraded landscapes. And the landscapes are so degraded, as I mentioned, because of climate change, and is really being exacerbated because of climate change. We have what's called Prosopis juliflora, and that has taken over this landscape. It was introduced here to green Kenya, but what it's done has been devastating. It is displacing the indigenous trees. It is sucking up so much water. And these indigenous trees are so important for the communities. They depend on the roots, the leaves. They have a lot of traditional use for these indigenous trees. And for lions, it is the most essential habitat for them to hide in. So now this invasive species is taking over the indigenous trees, and it has become such a big problem. But the Mama Simba said, we're going to go out and we're going to keep clearing the invasive species, and we're going to restore them with the indigenous trees. It's never been done before. We had no idea how long it would take to grow some of these indigenous trees, mainly what's called a toothbrush tree. But Menteli, right in front of her house, she has a toothbrush tree nursery now, and she's busy planting them and really testing out different substrates, testing out different water quality, and really seeing what is needed to help these indigenous trees to grow, and how can we stop the growth of this invasive species. The women are also out planting grass. And again, because they are they are putting the land management in their hands. They are finding solutions to what can be done in this degraded landscape. And they said, we're going to plant grass, we're going to set up grass enclosures, we're going to harvest grass seeds, we're going to spread it out so we can help wild herbivores, we can help livestock during the drought. And this is really the women at work. And you can see the results of their amazing efforts. All women have now set up 2 huge grass enclosures, and they're busy every day maintaining them and just ensuring that they really survive during the droughts. And here she is, Mantelli, truly an extraordinary lady. She came to me many years ago, about, I think, 8 years ago now, and she said, you've been driving around in this area. Why can't I drive? And she said, I'm sure if you can drive, I can drive. And Mantelli doesn't speak English, but we said, right, we're going to send you off to driving school. And we sent her off to driving school. She spent a month there, which she absolutely hated, but she came back with her driving license. And she is the first woman in this entire region who from a village drives around. She's monitoring lions, she's clearing invasive species, she's managing the whole Mama Simba program. And every year I keep saying to her, Mantelli, what's next? Because I have a feeling something else is going to pop up and she's going to say, I'm going to do this. And I have absolutely no doubt this amazing lady is going to do it. She actually said English is next. So I think she's on her way to Nairobi to spend a couple of months there to learn English. This is our amazing team, the Iwaso Lions team. And what I'm so proud of, we are 100% Kenyan team. We are 50% women. We are truly a community-led project. This is all about having the communities lead conservation efforts to really see what is best for their land, their wildlife, and this spectacular landscape. And it is the communities driving those efforts. And that gives me a lot of hope, because I know that the fact that everything is in the hands of our women and our team, I know that lions and this landscape will just thrive no matter what comes its way. And the results are there. Our lion population in the last 10 years has tripled. And not just that, I'm really excited to say that for the first 10 years of starting this project and monitoring the lions, we were only seeing solitary lions, but now we actually have prides of lions. Lions have come together because they feel safe enough to come together. And that is down to the work and the efforts that the women and our warriors have all put together to protect their land. Thank you so much. Again, it's been such an honor to speak to you today. Ashe Oleng is Samburu is thank you in Samburu. And here's my email address. And again, Daughters for Earth, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mantelli. I had the privilege of driving with Mantelli, and she's a great driver, and she does speak a little bit of English, you know. Fantastic. Thank you, Aksanta Sana. Well, as you can see, it is so inspiring to hear that. I mean, honestly, my heart gets filled every time I hear and see what women are doing to protect our planet Earth. And they're doing it with such love and such dedication and limited resources. Talking about that, I want to ask a very real question, because it's one thing for all of you to give us the inspiring results of your work and all the things that you have done and the outcome. What are the practical challenges that you truly are facing and that we need to know about? I'll start with you, Shabani, since you just ended with us.
Some of the challenges we face in our work, I mean, obviously the droughts and climate are big ones. They're big environmental challenges we have here. This is a very rapidly changing landscape. And I feel one of our biggest challenges is constantly keeping on top of everything, because we tackle one issue, suddenly a new one will come along, and then you've got to adapt and be flexible. Our team is constantly on its toes because there's new things that keep coming up that were never part of the plan. They were never part of our budgets. Suddenly we're dealing with invasive species. 10 years ago, I had no idea about this. We also have diseases, another new threat that's just crept up on us. Infrastructure, massive infrastructure projects are coming in here in northern Kenya. Again, the fact that we have to pivot and adjust and look for funding for all these projects, it's tough. It gets very, very challenging sometimes. I would say that's probably one of our challenges. And Secondly, just keeping it going. I think multi-year support is so important. We are a project that's not just popped in and we're going to leave in a few years. We're here to stay. This is the community. And just to have long-term, multi-year, consistent funding is so important so we can plan ahead. We can make decisions about what we will do next year and really put some real forward thinking into everything. So I think that is something we really do struggle in as a project, is just getting consistent support. I would say those are some of them.
Thank you so much. It's in a recent discussion with some female scientists, they were talking about and this was much more from the glacier and the impact of the melting of the ice in the glaciers of climate change and global warming. And one of the things that stayed with me, the scientist said, we are not talking, we're talking about global weirding or climate weirding, sorry, as in there's no predictions of weathers the way we used to know the weather's patterns. And she was like, weather as you know it, as we all grew up with, will no longer be the case moving on in the future. And it seems that some of the things that you're talking about is actually because of this very changeable environment that we have never faced before in different communities, in different areas. And I do appreciate the need for almost security, financial security, so you can continue the work and a long-term addressing that situation. We started at Daughters for Earth with first time just to get the first 200 women-led efforts, which some of the women here are included, but now we are really shifting into how to continue finding all these women and to have to shift into long-term support to them, not through us directly and through hopefully other organizations or foundations that would join us. Mackenzie, how about you? What's the challenges you face?
Yeah, I feel like if you were to have asked me 4 years ago, it would have been just convincing people not to use pesticides, and people don't know. But I think it's really changed, and I think now people do know. And we'll put on a webinar about how to go organic, and we'll get like 130 groundskeepers to come to an online webinar, which is really big for groundskeepers because they don't really do much online. And so I think now it's really just about a lack of education of how to do the solution. People, they're like, I get it. I don't want to spray pesticides. What do you want me to do instead? And so it's really about changing the education. And so and we do our pilot projects, but we're really thinking about how to scale this in a bigger way. And we're working on developing a course for groundskeepers and especially thinking in the years ahead to reach the next generation of groundskeepers, because it's really hard to convince, typically it's a middle-aged man how to do their job when they already have been doing a job a certain way for many years. And so we want to get to people when they're starting the job. And so that the first piece of education they get when they're becoming a groundskeeper is how to manage it in an organic way, and learning about horticulture and ecology. And so I think that's the challenge, is just developing that. And we know what we need to do. And kind of just echoing Shivani as well, we're a small nonprofit, limited capacity. We're only 2 full-time people trying to work with all these schools across the country. But it's exciting because I think there definitely is an appetite for it. We just need the resources to scale it, essentially.
Yeah, I hear you. Thank you so much. A quick question on that. Who are the young groundskeepers? I'm just curious about what makes a person wanting to be a groundskeeper. How do you reach them?
I think it's a new opportunity that we need to create and advertise, because there's really not a lot of young groundskeepers, but there's so many young people who do want to become farmers, and it's so hard for young people to access land. And I think a lot of people, they want to work with their hands and they want to be outside. And I think it's our job to frame it in that way of like, this is a really cool job. If we can show that it pays well and that you can have this awesome opportunity to be outside and grow food on a campus and leave some of the land for conservation and plan rewilding on a campus, I think it could be a really cool opportunity. But it's something that we need to create and advertise and talk about in that way. So it'd be a very new concept, but I think it's a really exciting one, because a lot of people like, I want to go into a environmentally friendly job. They don't really know what it is. They want to be outside. And so I think it's all of our jobs to kind of create that, which is exciting.
We have a question from, I think it applies to everyone, but applies to you, I think mostly Mackenzie, is from Lauren Ambry. And the question is, when we talk about water usage, drought, and water shortage, has anyone in America and other countries thought about activism around golf courses? I know they suck up so much water and it feels as if they need to be in the equation.
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's such a good one. I mean, golf courses use, a lot of times they're right on the water too, and they use an immense amount of pesticides and synthetic fertilizers, and all of that is running off into the water. There's also a really high rate of cancer amongst golfers, which people don't know. And it's something I've definitely thought about. It's not something we're focused on, only because we could only do so much, and schools itself is such a big undertaking. But I think it's thinking we're not just trying to work with schools, we're really trying to change culture around pesticide usage and rewilding. And so we're hoping with that it can ripple out, and maybe there is a group that will focus on that. Or maybe, I think with us, with the certification, what's exciting is we're not just certifying schools, we're certifying anywhere that has a green space, whether that's a tech campus, a hospital, it could be a golf course. And so it's definitely something that we would love to get into. But there's been some media out there about golf courses that have since become like shut down and have become rewilded and now are being converted into conservation spaces. So you check that out. So that's really exciting, but there is no group that's specifically focused on that. We would love to be at some point. So thank you for that question. And if there is like a actual golf course in your community that you want to convert to organic, yeah, reach out. I mean, we could definitely help.
Okay, fantastic. Maisha, how about you? There is so much, I feel I really want to hear your perspective, because I feel like on the one hand, anything that is related to women and proving why women are good in and efficient in decision makings and creating transformations and change and better outcome every time on any sector, financial sector, political sector, environmental sector, we're always told that we need data and facts and figures. I'm curious, where have you seen data and facts have actually changed the levels of political change or in terms of women's issues? And what do you think is the most need as it comes to the correlation between climate change and women?
Yeah, thank you, Zainab. That's an excellent question. And again, it's so amazing to hear from all of you. It's really interesting because you're absolutely right. There's often this kind of attitude, well, show me why, show me the proof. It's as though you're going out of your way to support women-led efforts, as opposed to women are half the population. But I think if you take the economy, for example, and pretty much all across the board, and Zainab, you and I have worked on these issues for many, many years, people get it in terms of you can't leave women out of the workforce. You can't not have women if you want economic growth. And that is true in a country like Japan, a member of the G7, as it is for a growing, economy in a low income or lower middle income country like Bangladesh. They are often the driving force for social development and economic growth. And so that evidence base is quite substantial. In the peace and security sector, I would say over the course of 20, 25 years, that evidence base is also growing. Not that everyone's converted and understanding of it, but that it's much harder to dispute. And you can see that at the United Nations with the UN Security Council, you can see it at the national level just by the virtue of how many countries have national action plans on women, peace, and security. But this issue has not taken the same kind of traction when it comes to women in climate action. And the couple of points I wanted to make here is that first, yes, it's about the right thing to do, but part of our research partnership, Zainab, as you know, is to demonstrate why it's for better outcomes. It's the strategic thing to do, not just better outcomes for women, but for better outcomes for communities, for countries, and for the entire planet. And there is an evidence base to grow in that regard. The second thing is it's really, really important, and something that we are trying to work on is sex disaggregated data. We have institutions like the World Bank, national ministries, plenty of other places. There's a lot of really good sex disaggregated data when it comes to health, education, employment, so on and so forth. not when it comes to climate, not when it comes to the environment. And that data gap makes it that much harder to convince investors, policymakers that they need to care about this and that it's ultimately as much in their interest as in the interest of anyone else. And I think that's something that we're trying to work on. And then the third point I would make that's so important is the breaking down of silos. So, Zainab, you've been to COP, I've been to COP, we've been to countless UN General Assemblies and plenty of other international conferences. And when it comes to women in climate action, it's often on the margins and considered somehow separate from health or education or a just energy transition. And that's just not only inaccurate, but ultimately hampers progress. And so, for example, at FP Analytics, we don't just work on women in climate action. We work on climate and health. We work on energy and finance and really breaking down the silos of people's understanding and therefore the financing and the policies that are developed. We're a research organization, so that's where our expertise lies, but ultimately being able to connect those dots is so important. And I just wanted to give a shout out to what happens to be my all-women team with respect to this research partnership. Anjali Yuani, who is a political economist on my team, is on this call right now. And then Isabel Schmidt, who's actually based out of London, is also a senior researcher on this team. And, we're really trying to close those knowledge gaps, but also do it in a way that's compelling for decision makers, whether you're industry, whether you're philanthropy, whether you're government. So back to you.
It's perfect ending. Thank you, Maisha. Really, I mean, because the things that the only solution is in collaboration instead of competition, in coexistence, promoting coexistence instead of conquering, and actually ultimately promoting a new relationship with Earth. We are all in it together here, and so much is at stake. And the only way we can do it is together, basically. That's the only way the solutions can happen. We are doing our drops at Daughters for Earth and all the women in here. I hope you join us in any drop you want. We are on a mission to make sure that women are getting more airtime, more financing, more data, more records, more celebration, more support for their leadership in protecting our Mother Earth. We need their leadership and wisdom, and we need everyone to create any change and all the change that we have in our life. So thank you so much. I am honored, honestly, to hear from you. My heart is full, and I'm grateful for each and every one of you and for your partnerships. Thank you so much. And let's move forward and spread the word. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everybody. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, Maisha. Thank you, everyone, truly.
Thank you for everyone who joined. We will be sharing the recording with you, as well as the amazing presentations that we saw. So thank you and have a great day ahead.
Thank you, Anna, and all Daughters for Earth team. Really appreciate it. Thank you.